and understood these things. Now we're going to look at what Stephen said concerning the living oracles that were given to us by our fathers. Again, the word oracle, logion, communication, and these are the living oracles, and these are dealing with the feast of the Lord. The feast of the Lord are the living oracles that were committed to Israel's keeping. And the feast are the shadow pictures of the things that the Messiah must fulfill. And here it is that we begin seeing this. It is after, near the end of the gospel record, in which now this is after the record in which the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth. And two of the disciples, Cleopas and another disciple, who were earlier in Jerusalem with the assembly of all the disciples behind closed doors because they were afraid of the religious leaders. They had just killed their leader just a few days before, and now these men in this group were so depressed. Now remember, these men are in their mid-age now. They've sold everything. They've sold their businesses. They've left their parents and their families, left their jobs. They've given everything to the poor, and they've been following Yahshua of Nazareth around. They have believed that he was the Messiah, and now their lives are shattered. Cleopas and one of the other disciples are fed up. They slam the door, they walk out of Jerusalem, and they're on their way to Emmaus. It's the first day of the week, and it's time to just go back into the world and try to put the broken pieces together. As they're walking along, they're having a very heavy conversation. They are heartbroken. They are depressed. And this stranger comes up behind them. They don't recognize him, but we find out later that it is the resurrected Messiah in his resurrected body, and he disguises himself so that they don't recognize who he is. And as they're walking along talking, he comes up behind them and says, "Excuse me, gentlemen, but what is this conversation you're having? Why are you so depressed?" And Cleopas answered and said, "Are you a stranger in Jerusalem and have not known the things which are come to pass in these last days?" And the stranger said unto them, "What things?" Like he didn't know? What things? And as they walked along the way, that is when he then said, well, what happened next? He is drawing out every detail that he can get them to remember. Well, tell me more about this. And extracting every single detail from them as they walk along the way, and they're telling him now everything that had taken place that last week, and right down to the subtle nuances of everything that had transpired. And then finally Cleopas just broke and said, "And we trusted that he was the Messiah." And the stranger said, "O fools, and slow of heart to believe all that the Nevi'im, the prophets, have spoken. Ought not Christ to have suffered these things which you have just spoken of, and entered into his glory? And beginning at Moses and all of the prophets, he expounded unto them in all these scriptures the things concerning himself." He took them right back down that road that they had just walked down and told them that everything that they had just told them, he showed them right in the scriptures how every single detail was written. It was embedded in the feast of the Lord, and that he had just fulfilled the spring feast of the Lord in every detail in which they had rehearsed it every year of their lives. And when they got all the way out to Emmaus, and he then sat and broke bread with them, and he gave thanks. He gave thanks to God, and he spoke the same words that he had spoken just a few days before when he was with his disciples there at the Last Supper. At the Last Supper, it says that he took the bread and he blessed God and said, "Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamosi lechem mim haaretz." Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. He spoke the very same prayer that 1,000 years before, when Abraham came back from the slaughter of kings, in which he delivered Lot his nephew, and Melchizedek, the king of righteousness, came out of Jerusalem and brought forth bread and wine to Abraham. When Melchizedek came out and brought the bread and wine out, Melchizedek spoke that very prayer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamosi lechem mim haaretz. And he taught Abraham about the coming Messiah. Right at that point, when he shared the bread and the wine with Abraham, it does not record everything in the Scriptures at that point of what took place. But we know that from that time on, then Abraham then taught his sons and all of their offspring, and every Shabbat, as we gather around the table, the high priest of the home, the father of that family, will take the bread in his hands and he will bless God with that same prayer. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. And the last night that Joshua was with his disciples, he said, I am the bread of life. This is my body which is broken for you. This what you have been doing every meal, every year, year after year for 1,000 years. This was looking forward to this very time that I would be God's provision for you, that my body would be broken for you. So from now on, you do this in remembrance of me.